It is now time for us to start getting ready for our first proctored midterm, actually our only midterm, but our first proctored test. And I want to talk to you about how you should be getting ready for it. So the first thing you should notice is when you're going through the list of stuff, right now this one popped up, you may have already looked at it, we're at the midterm review. So when you go ahead and click into here, you will see the first thing is a video just talking about how to use old homework assignments, to how to look at them, how to view them in in WebAssign, and how to also use your personal study plans, where to go to see those problems for extra practice. So that's what that video is about. The next one here, the practice problems, when you click on it, you can go ahead and open this up and you'll see it's a list of really everything that's on your test. It pretty much spells it out. And I'll walk through it with you really fast right now just so you can see it. Um, what's going to be on this test? Well, there's going to be interpreting the meaning of partial derivatives. All right. So you have to not only know how to find them, but you also know how to interpret them, understand what they mean. You need to be able to find critical points, maxes, mins, and saddles of a 3D graph. Well, that's chapter 15, right? And it was specifically chapter 15.3, I do believe. Then we need to be able to find critical points, maxes, mins, and saddles. Well, actually, not saddles when it's constrained, of a 3D graph with a constraint. So that would be 15.4. And remember the two techniques that we covered, substitution method and Lagrange multipliers. I will say Lagrange multipliers is possibly a little more important, so make sure you know how to do that one. Well, make sure you know how to do both. Then that was chapter 15. Then going back to the beginning, solving systems of linear equations using reduced echelon form of matrices. Chapter 3, being able to do Gauss-Jordan by hand, being able to do reduced echelon form in the calculator, being able to do substitution method, elimination technique, and then writing linear equations from word problems. Because remember, all this stuff was used in different word problem type settings. So you're going to need to be able to read a word problem, pull out your linear equations, and then decide how you're going to solve it most efficiently using one of these techniques. You will be required to do Gauss-Jordan by hand, just as a warning, so you got to make sure you know how to do it. So make sure you refresh that pattern, make sure you remember that pattern. Let's see. Then chapter 4, the big idea here was finding an inverse of a matrix. And remember I told you in the notes, you are not required to do that by hand. That you can use your calculator for, your TI-83 or TI-84. And then we're going to add, subtract, and multiply matrices by hand. There'll be some that your calculator will not do for you on the test. And most importantly, knowing how to solve systems of equations in AX equals B form. Okay, so we're going to make sure we know how to do those things. Last, chapter 5 was just doing max and minimization problems with linear inequalities. That was the greater than or less than or equal to, all that stuff, using the simplex method. When they say duality theory, what that means is the dual method is built off of the simplex method, so that's why it's called duality theory. So you need to know all your simplex methods, 5.3, 5.4, those ones are necessary. You need to know how to do those. The dual, I will not require you to actually do dual method. You can just do that if you would like. But because every dual problem can be done using general simplex, the 5.4 method, you don't actually have to do dual on the test if you don't want to. The only thing you need to know how to do with dual is you need to know when you can use it. What problems are you allowed to use it on? And then, of course, word problems, word problems, word problems. Make sure you just practice the heck out of word problems, because there's nothing worse than seeing a word problem on the test and getting frozen, and having to leave the whole thing blank, where if you just would have powered through it a little bit and had some techniques for your word problems, then you would have gotten credit and you would have done just fine. So just practice word problems. Okay, so then what you'll notice here is I've thrown a few practice problems down just to give you an idea of types of problems that I might ask you, or just to kind of refresh a few basic skills. But these are in no way, shape, or form just the same problems that are on your test. In no way, shape, or form just this is what your test is going to look like with just the numbers changed. Nothing like that. So please, please, please don't expect that. Okay. Just use these problems for part of your review, but you really need to go back and make sure you can do every single one of these techniques listed up here. Okay. The next thing I'll point out here is, I'm not going to ask you to find the inverse of a matrix. That's just calculator work. So why am I asking you to do this? Where was that important? Well, that was important with the ax equals b form, right? So when you're solving ax equals b, so make sure you kind of look behind the meaning of some of these and say, why is he asking me to do this? Why am I asking you to multiply matrices? Well, when we do ax equals b, we solve by finding the inverse, we have to multiply. My guess is if you need to do it by hand, that means I'm probably going to make you do one that isn't all numbers. There's probably going to be a letter in it, so you have to multiply them by hand. Okay, so just be ready for that. Um, and then here again, make sure you know how to do this is a Lagrange multipliers method or substitution method. This is a good problem to practice doing both ways. Don't just do it one way and say, I know how to do it this way. Make sure you can do it both ways. Again, solve the system of equations by using Gauss-Jordan, Rousse-Echelon form, and ax equals b. The point being, these methods all do the same thing. So make sure you know how to do all of them. And then I gave you a word problem and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is kind of how you use the sheet. Now, the next problem, or the next line, number 3, is the exact same sheet, except I think it's going to have old chapter numbers on them. So you can kind of ignore the top part up here. Yeah, it's a little, just ignore that. But the key thing I want from here is you'll see the answers are in here, so you can check your work. Now, if you really, after you check your work, if something's not quite right or whatever, you can watch video problems. This is me showing you how I did every single one of the problems. So when you click into this, here's your video for problem number 1, where I'll walk you through the process of doing number 1. So that is your review. This is how you review. You do these problems, make sure you can do those skills, and you should be good to go for the test. Okay, let's talk about how you're going to take your midterm. So people who are taking it on campus at PVCC, it's very straightforward. You're going to be handed a test when you check in at the testing center. You're allowed to use pencil, paper, calculator, and your brain. That's it. Okay. And when you're handed your test, you're going to be given also a lot of scratch paper. If they don't give it to you, ask for it, because what you're going to do is you'll notice on the test, it'll be similar to this. There's not going to be enough space to do all the work. The idea is you do one problem per piece of scratch paper. So you do problem number 1 on the first piece of scratch paper. You do problem number 2 on the second piece of scratch paper, so on and so forth. So if there's 10 problems at the end of the test, you should be handing in 10 pieces of scratch paper. And that's where I want all of your work. Okay, I need to see everything on that paper. That's what I'm going to grade. Excuse me. And then you're done. Nothing to turn in on the computer. Nothing to do. Otherwise, it's a pen and paper test. Okay. For those of you who are taking it through Proctor U, you will be getting a test through WebAssign. They will have the code to log you into WebAssign, so don't worry about that when you go to log in. They'll take care of that. There'll be no lockdown browser or anything of that nature, because they're going to be watching on your computer screen. So they're going to go ahead and log you in, and you'll be in the test. The problems will appear on the screen, and you will do the problems the exact same way I'm describing to the people who are taking it here at the Q building. Problem number 1 goes on one piece of scratch paper. Problem number 2 goes on a second piece of scratch paper. And your answer blanks will not be graded. Okay, so no, when you hit submit, when you submit your test, you are not going to get any feedback. It's not going to tell you right or wrong, so don't let that freak you out, okay? You're just going to submit your answers, okay? And then what you're going to do is you're then going to have 24 hours to either scan your pictures and upload them to me through my email, which I have typed right up here at the top of the screen, david.dwork@paradisevalley.edu. So you can either scan and email them to me. If you come onto campus for some other reason, maybe late at night or something, you can always bring them by my office, which is in the syllabus, but it's Q265. You can always drop them by my office. You can slide them under my door, put them in my mailbox, whatever you want. But I need your work. I need your work. I would actually recommend put them under my door, so that way nobody accidentally throws them away or does something silly. But you're going to have 24 hours from when you take the test through Proctor U to get me your work. And the key thing here, the work on your page better lead to the answers you typed in on WebAssign. I'll be checking to make sure that you didn't have extra time to work things out. The answers better match the work. If they don't, they'll be marked wrong. Okay, so if you have any questions about the test, how it's going to work, anything I have not covered, please do not hesitate to ask. The key thing is I want you guys to feel prepared, that you know what you need to study, you feel that you know what you're going to be walking into, what the format of the test will be, so none of that catches you off guard. So if you have any questions, please ask.